Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. My name is Jenna Wolfe. His name is Nick Wright. Chris Canty is joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jenna.
How are you, Chris? Thanks for being
What up, Canty? What's happening, man?
How are you doing?
You couldn't be more excited to come on this show today.
I'm so happy.
You couldn't wait. I saw you tweeting during the game yesterday. I know you got.
I don't even know what game you're referring to.
You know what I'm talking about.
He was on one corner with the Patriots. I was on a completely different corner with the Cleveland Browns. And this morning we have both been proven right.
It's a great day. But listen, by the way, happy birthday to two of the greatest sports figures of anyone's lifetime, Tiger Woods and LeBron James.
How about
both
three?
Their birthday today.
One of those guys won Decade Athlete by AP.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
LeBron James won Athlete of the Decade.
The one day we were actually not focusing on basketball because there was so much football to talk about. The playoffs are officially set after a crazy weekend in the NFL. And we're going to start with the biggest surprise to just about everyone, Dolphins included.
Oh, I didn't see this game.
Oh, you probably didn't. Check it out, Nick. Patriots hosting the, quote, thought to be tanking Miami Dolphins. 17-point favorites coming in. Remember, the Pats blew them out back in week 2. Yesterday, when they needed the win to secure the bye, they just couldn't do it. They lost to Miami, Nick.
To Miami?
At home, buddy.
Miami's
the loss.
Very good.
Plus, I don't know if you hear this, the Chiefs won. They beat the Chargers, so those two things combined dropped the Patriots to the 3 seed, which means...
Do you get a bye at the 3 seed?
They will host the Titans on Wildcard weekend.
Heavens to Betsy.
And now the Patriots will be on the road the rest of the way if they do indeed win. Let's hear from TB12 after the loss.
Well, it was a great chance for us to not play next week, so we didn't take advantage of it. We just didn't play good enough, and we all wish we'd have done a better job. Certainly I do.
I have to ask how surprised you were at the outcome of this game, Nick.
I was gobsmacked, shocked. I don't know that there have been 5 people more pessimistic about the Patriots in 2019 than me. And I was stupefied that they lost this game this way. Forget the Patriots part of it. They're 17-point favorites. That's the biggest upset in the NFL in 20 years. Not in Week 17, not in New England. Whole league, 256 games a year, 20 years. So we're talking about over 5,000 games played. The biggest upset in 20 years was yesterday in New England. What was on the line? The bye, which we know. Canty, this is one of your, I would say, most basic points, but one of also the most important ones. Hell of a lot easier to win 2 games than to win 3. Hell of a lot easier with a week of rest, guaranteeing at least the divisional round in your building, if not both rounds in your building. And that is what New England has lived off of for a decade. Had a bye every single year since 2010, and they've made the conference championship game every single year since 2011. But it's not just that they lost this game in this context, but the way in which they lost. New England, since Brady has taken over at quarterback, 136 times they've had a 4-point or greater lead in the fourth quarter at home. They were 135-1 prior to yesterday. The one loss was the opening week game to Kansas City a few years ago. And they lost to Ryan Fitzpatrick after Brady actually did driving down the field. To his credit, he had a good final drive of the game, or what could have been the final drive of the game. And then you don't just let Miami drive the field, Canty. It's 13 plays, 75 yards surgically. It's not one big busting coverage. Devontae Parker goes for 65 yards. No, they had one play in the whole drive greater than 10 yards.
And that was the throw to Devontae Parker where he cooked Stephon Gilmore.
Who you brought up before the show. He was giving him the work. The guy who I thought was Defensive Player of the Year through 15 games, not so much through 16 games. And now the Patriots have a very live Titans team. Then if they get through that game, they are in Kansas City rather than the other way around, and in all likelihood a little more banged up than they are now after a playoff game. So I cannot believe they lost this game the way they lost it and to whom they lost it with what was on the line.
Yeah, it's what it looked like, because if you were to tell me that the Patriots would have a 4-point lead with less than 4 minutes to go and Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Dolphins have to drive the length of the field in order to have a chance to win that game, I would have said no shot. You're talking about a team that's in the bottom 8 in turnovers, a quarterback that's prone to throwing the ball to the other team. But to Ryan Fitzpatrick's credit, he played a clean game, and he's put his team in position to win. He threw a lot of 50-50 balls up there, and his receivers were able to come down with him, going up against what we have been calling the best secondary in football the entire year. Mentioned Devontae Parker. He had 11 targets, 8 catches for 137 yards, with Stephon Gilmore shadowing him for the majority of the game. So the guys that the Dolphins needed to make plays stepped up and made plays. And I guess the thing that shocks me the most, Jenna, is that the Dolphins' offense was one-dimensional. They didn't have any running game to speak of. I think they had 63 yards rushing. So going up against one of the best defenses in the National Football League, and you made the opposing offense one-dimensional, and you still can't stop them at the end of the game with such importance in terms of the stakes in the playoffs on the line. That to me is the part that's inexcusable.
But what's the one thing the Patriots didn't seem to have that the Dolphins of all teams had yesterday? If you watch that game, it looked like the Dolphins had confidence. They weren't playing for anything. They went out there and they played their best. The Patriots looked like they were just pressing really tight, which is something you saw at the end of the first half.
Well, the end of the first half was, in real time, a jarring moment. This isn't Monday morning quarterbacking revisionist. The Patriots have their best drive of the half. This is after the Brady pick six, after they fall down 10 points. They get a field goal, they get a stop. They then go 5 plays, 82 yards, and on that drive, Brady has his biggest play of the game, the 50 yards Philip Dorsett. They then immediately force a 3-and-out. That 3-and-out happens with 1:51 left in the first half. The Dolphins have the ball on their own 20, with the Patriots having all 3 timeouts. And Bill Belichick does not call timeout, does not give Tom Brady, coming off his best drive, the offense with a chance to take the lead. Conditions pretty good. 1:45 and 2 timeouts is what the Patriots could have gotten the ball back with. Instead, he lets the clock tick all the way down. Brian Flores and the Dolphins smartly take the whole play clock. They punt away. Patriots run the ball up the middle, let the clock tick down again, run it again, go into halftime. That it was such an indictment on the faith Belichick has in the offense. Maybe it's because last week in Buffalo, they went for it near the end of the first half. Remember, they go for it on that 4th down, and it leads to Buffalo getting the touchdown with 6 seconds left in the half. But after Brady has his best moment of the game, that 5-play, 82-yard touchdown drive, to not give them a chance to get a field goal. They needed 40 yards. In 1:40 with 2 timeouts is what they could have had to get in field goal range. To not do that, that loomed large the rest of the game, Canty.
No, you're absolutely right, but I don't think that Belichick has any confidence in his offense just because they've shown him for the majority of the season that he shouldn't have confidence in this offense. And we keep waiting for the Patriots to figure it out, and we just have to accept the fact that this group, the 2019 offense for the New England Patriots, won't figure it out. This is the worst offense that Bill Belichick has had in New England this decade on a yards per play basis. So going into the postseason, I don't have any confidence that this team is going to be able to flip a switch. This offense is all of a sudden going to get it together. And in the way that they lost yesterday, it felt like that Patriots defense was all out of favors for their offense. Think about what their defense and their special teams has done all year long. Stealing extra possessions, scoring on defense and on special teams, blocking punts, creating field position. All of those things all of a sudden went away in that game against inferior competition. You're talking about a double-digit loss Miami Dolphins team, and somehow with a bye on the line, you're not able to come through and get that win. That to me is surprising. It's not easy to roll into Foxborough and get a win in December. But the fact that the Dolphins were able to do that, that should be a flashing red light for the New England Patriots going into this wildcard matchup with the Tennessee Titans team that's dangerous.
And look at the difference between the way the the Patriots defense played in week 2 when they lost to the Patriots and what you saw yesterday
after week 2, after the 43-0 victory over Miami, some headlines about the Dolphins. Washington Post, 0-16 as possible. Miami Herald, worst team ever. Dolphins have become national joke. Forbes, Dolphins on pace for worst offense and worst defense in NFL history. That team just went to Foxborough
and beat them.
Executed a 4th-quarter comeback, had a pick 6 on Brady, beat the Patriots, and now New England's playing a wild card weekend for the first team in a decade. It is a shocking turn of events for anybody watching football yesterday.
Last time the Patriots played on wild card weekend,
they got
worked out for them. Just go put that out there.
You probably know that. All right, moving on to the Dallas Cowboys now, and their needs and their wants. Dallas needed a win and an Eagles loss if they wanted to get to the postseason. They got the win routing Washington. They didn't get an Eagles loss as Philly pulled away from the Giants to win the NFC East. Eagles are moving on. Cowboys are going home, leaving Jerry Jones to answer many questions about the future of his franchise, most notably about his head coach, Jason Garrett.
Out of respect to Garrett, would you kind of make a quick decision just so he won't be twisting to a certain extent?
Again, I'm not going to comment on anything to do about those kinds of decisions. I really know that that's the order of things and what we want to hear and talk about if I've got anything to say of substance tonight other than my disappointment about not being in the playoffs. But I'm not going to get into that out of respect for everybody.
All right, Nick, is Jason Garrett, though, responsible for the Cowboys not making the playoffs, for everything that happened to this team this season?
He's not solely responsible. If we're doing a pie chart, he does not have the majority of it, but he's got the biggest piece of it. And when you look at the Cowboys and you look at their numbers, not just the eye test of talent, but their point differential. Their point differential this year was plus 113. That is elite. The only teams better than that this year: Baltimore, New England, San Francisco, Kansas City, New Orleans. What most people think are the 5 best teams in football, maybe with Green Bay sprinkled in. Every team, 11 teams in the NFL had a point differential, meaning they outscored their opponents on the season by more than 30 points. 30. 10 of them are in the playoffs. The 11th is the Dallas Cowboys, and they, again, were top 6. That is coaching. It's not just coaching, but the inability to beat good teams, which they could not do all year, the inability to win close games. They were, 0-7 in games decided by less than 10 points. That is coaching, not exclusively, but partially. And once again, for the 4th time in Jason Garrett's career, it wasn't this week, but last week, you had a win and you're in game in week 16 or 17 against a divisional opponent, and for the 4th time in those 4 opportunities, they lost. So Jason Garrett's fate to me was sealed a month ago when Jerry Jones put him on notice after the Patriot game saying Jason will be coaching in the league next year, but didn't say where. And then they fell flat against Detroit, and they fell flat against Buffalo, and they fell flat against Philadelphia. But yeah, the 45%, 50% of the Cowboys' failures have to go on Jason Garrett. His contract's expiring, and his time in Dallas is over.
Well, you're talking about Jerry Jones putting Jason Garrett on notice a month ago. I mean, Jason Garrett came into this season on notice because Jerry Jones wouldn't give him a contract extension. There's a reason why NFL teams don't allow coaches to be lame ducks going into a year. Just because you want the players in the locker room to respect the head coach's authority. But if you're a guy in that locker room, if you're DeMarcus Lawrence or if you're Ezekiel Elliott, you have more job security than your head coach does. And that does something to a team's mentality. So we're trying to figure out why Jason Garrett couldn't get this team to turn on the light switch, why he couldn't get this group going. One of the rosters that we said was the most talented coming into 2019. A big part of it has to do with Jerry Jones not giving Jason Garrett the job security. So while Nick puts a lot of the blame of this season on Jason Garrett, I go back to Jerry Jones' decision this offseason not to extend Jason Garrett. We all understand that Jerry wants to compete for a championship, and he finally feels like he has a team that's capable of doing that. But you do have to empower your head coach, and Jerry Jones failed to do that. So that's why I put a lot of the failure of this year on the owner. The only problem is you can't fire Jerry Jones. He's going to be there. So I think the next to take the blame has to be Jason Garrett. He won't be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys in 2020.
Look, the good thing about this team is that it's basically intact. They've got a good team for all intents and purposes. They're very talented. You're probably going to have your quarterback. You've already paid your running back. You got a great wide receiver. Your defense is a little banged up, but you got your great defense. So when you're looking at filling that position, what type of head coach are you looking for when you know the relationship with the owner and you know what kind of team you already have?
I do not think the Cowboys can afford the risk of an unproven college coach. I think that the risk versus reward on that is it's out of whack. They are not rebuilding. They cannot have a year of growing pains where you figure some things out, you show some good things, and it's like, all right, it's about 2021 now. It is win right now. Win now mode for the Cowboys, honestly, started the years following 2016. They didn't know they were in win-now mode in Dak's rookie year. But when you go 13-3, when you have the rushing champ in Zeke Elliott, they were in we can compete for a Super Bowl right now from 2017 forward. 17, they missed the playoffs, go 9-7 after Zeke's suspension. Last year, they start horribly, rally down the stretch, win one playoff game, but they were never a Super Bowl threat. This year, they were never a Super Bowl threat because their inability to win close games. They on the average Cowboys game this year, they outscored their opponent by 7 points, and they outgained their opponent by 100 yards, and they finished 8-8. What you need is a professional, seasoned head coach. So people are going to say Ron Rivera, but Ron Rivera might get hired before the end of today's show with Washington. I'm going to say a name that a lot of people aren't mentioning. Leslie Frazier. Leslie Frazier, who made the playoffs with Christian Ponder as his quarterback in Minnesota, they had a short trigger with him, as they often do with certain coaches in this league. He's done a great job as the defensive coordinator in Minnesota, would bring a toughness and a professionalism to the Cowboys I think they need. I think the Matt Rule, who if people don't know him, the head coach of Baylor, those guys, I'm not saying he wouldn't be a good head coach. I'm not saying Lincoln Riley wouldn't be a good NFL head coach. But if they're a disaster, by the time you can recover from that, Zeke's done. Like, how long you're on a totally new team, so I want a known quantity as a head coach, and if he's a defensive-minded coach, to me, that's all the more of a bonus because it's a switch from what they have now. No, you're right. Once teams go through a coaching change, they usually go in the opposite direction of what they've already had. Jason Garrett, an offensive mind, they're probably going to lean toward the defensive side of the ball, but I'm with you in terms of not taking a chance on a college coach. You don't need a question mark as your head coach position when you have championship aspirations, but I don't think that the Cowboys can stay the course either. You can't go status quo and run this thing back with Jason Garrett. That's just not an option. You've had this guy there for the decade. He's had 9 full seasons. He took over with, I think, 8 games left in 2010 as the interim head coach after they moved on from Wade. But, I mean, in looking at Jason Garrett, it just has not been good enough. 85-67 is the record, but you've only got 3 playoff berths, 2 playoff wins. They're going to have to improve on that. This team is trying to get to the next level. I don't think Jason Garrett can take them there. I do think they need to find a coach that has NFL experience in that role as a head coach in order to put this team in the best position to try to compete in 2020. But quickly, you don't think Jerry Jones wants to bring in a name? He's a splashy owner. You don't think the reason he had Urban in his box, the reason there's then let me throw a name at you. Let me throw a name at you that checks the box of experience, not going offense to defense, though. What about offering Josh McDaniels $10 million a year? What about just saying, Josh McDaniels, you know what, come here. Belichick's going to coach there forever. You almost went to Indy. Josh McDaniels has the experience, obviously has learned from the greatest coach of all time. That maybe is a way to thread the needle of that is a name, but it also has some experience to it. That's a name I'd be on the lookout for as well. The only thing with Josh McDaniels is you have to wonder whether he'd be cool with Jerry Jones being the general manager. Because if he's learned anything from Bill Belichick in his first tenure as a head coach with the Denver Broncos, it's probably in my best interest if I have control over the roster. I don't know if Josh McDaniels is going to sign up for that. He'll have other opportunities where he can have more control within the organization, but as far as Jason Garrett, $10 million a year is $10 million. $10 million a year is $10 million a year, but you do want to put yourself in the best chance to succeed because if he becomes a head coach for the second time and it doesn't work out, chances are it won't be a third. But with Jason Garrett, the 3 losses that they're going to lament from this season, the loss to the New York Jets, the loss to the Buffalo Bills at home Thanksgiving, and then the loss the week after in Chicago. Those are 3 games that the Dallas Cowboys had no business losing. It's going to cost Jason Garrett his job. All right, time now for Putting Great on It, sponsored by CarMax. As for the Eagles, Philly won the NFC East with a win over the Giants. Carson Wentz threw for 289 yards and a score to get the injury-riddled Eagles into the playoffs. Nick, put a grade on Wentz's day. How can you give him anything but an A? They won. They won their 4th must-win game in a row. It was tied again going into the 4th quarter against the Giants team that gave him trouble a few weeks ago, and they ended up blowing them out. I give Carson Wentz an A. Yeah, Carson Wentz has to get an A, but you also got to give an A to that defense, especially the defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles. They showed up, made some game-changing plays, and then, of course, Malcolm Jenkins had that strip on Daniel Jones that set up that touchdown to kind of put things away in the 4th quarter. So A for Carson Wentz, also an A for that Philadelphia Eagles defense.
All right, finally, to the surprise of very few, the Cleveland Browns fired head coach Freddie Kitchens last night after one disappointing season as head coach. Cleveland had high expectations coming into the year, but ended 2019 with a very disappointing 6-10 record, a regression from their quarterback Baker Mayfield, and far more negative headlines than they needed and or wanted. All right, Nick, besides the head coach, what other changes do you think need to happen in Cleveland this offseason?
Baker's got to figure out what the hell happened and fix it. Now, he's a young player in this league, and it is the job of organizations to put the right coaches around young players in order to help them succeed. The Browns obviously this year did not do that with Freddie Kitchens, even though I'm sure that one of the big reasons they hired Freddie Kitchens was for that exact express purpose, but it failed spectacularly. Freddie Kitchens is now gone, but a lot of the blame should go to people other than Freddie, justifiably, because we can bang on their offensive line, but can he? Nick Chubb rushed for how many yards this year?
Shade under 1,500 yards.
Right. Like when the Browns finished their game, he was the rushing champ, right? Yep. And then Derrick Henry had a monster day and took it over from him. Odell had a bad year. Had 1,000 yards receiving. Myles Garrett, before he thumped Mason Rudolph on the head with his helmet, he was having the type of year we thought he could have, where he could maybe flirt with the 20 sack number, certainly blow past double-digit sacks. Yet the team was 6-10. They found a way any moment you had a little bit of hope for them to fall flat on their face, and they could not. Jenna, you were very curious about how they would deal with two things: a month of great success and a month of great failure. They couldn't get out of week one without tripping over their own headlines and their own news clippings. And so Freddie's now gone, which means the scapegoat's gone. The question for Baker Mayfield is, what way is your NFL career going to go? I still believe in him. I still think he can be a high-level NFL quarterback. But this year gets to be a mulligan for him, and they can blame Freddie. If he's terrible next season, then guess what? Cleveland, once again, for the 14th time since they've come back to Cleveland, is looking for a quarterback in the draft again, whether they want to admit it or not. He didn't have a bad year this year. He had a horrifying year this year. And so that is what needs to change for Cleveland. Their number one overall pick, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, needs to get back to looking anything close to that.
Yeah, if Baker doesn't have a bounce back year in 2020, not only will they be looking for another quarterback, they're going to be looking for another general manager too. Because this all starts with John Dorsey's decision to hire Freddie Kitchens in the first place, a job that he wasn't qualified for. Going into the 2018 year, Freddie Kitchens was the running backs coach, and when they fired Hugh Jackson, they elevated him to offensive coordinator, and Greg Williams was the interim head coach. And they said since Baker had so much success in the second half of his rookie year, they were going to have Freddie Kitchens be the head coach because they were afraid that another team would hire him because they thought he did such a great job as the offensive coordinator. But the reality is, Freddie Kitchens was put in a no-win situation by John Dorsey. Now, you can say it's because John Dorsey learned his lesson in Kansas City when they hired Andy Reid, and Andy Reid became the most important figure in that organization. They were going to decide to move on from John Dorsey. He didn't make that same mistake in Cleveland. But you also didn't give yourself a chance with the hire that you made as the head coach because the personalities on that team were too much for Freddie Kitchens to handle. He couldn't effectively set the agenda for the team, and that's where it starts. If you're going to have a young team, try to find a way to make a playoff push.
I said early on when they were making this coaching, searching the far and wide and all of it, I said Mike McCarthy was great. They brought him in and then they let him go, and maybe it was that reason. Maybe Dorsey had flashbacks of what happened in Kansas City. But they need someone to be able to corral the troops, if you will, a main voice that's not going to be friends with the players, but it's going to sort of have that discipline that they lacked on and off the field. What type of coach do you think they would use and need in Cleveland?
I feel very similarly to the Browns coaching search as I do the Cowboys coaching search, in that I do not want to take a risk. I want someone who has been an NFL head coach, because what you can't have is Baker Mayfield have to go through 4 head coaches in his first 4 years in the NFL. So Mike McCarthy, even though they passed on the first time around, that's an interesting name. The same guy I mentioned for the Cowboys, Leslie Frazier. I don't think Josh McDaniels would go within 100 miles of Cleveland, but someone with some coaching experience in the NFL that you know is not going to be a disaster. Because if you hire the wrong guy this time, Hugh was his first coach for Baker. Then you had the interim. Then Freddie for a year. Then if you hire a guy who it's like, oh, my God, he has no idea how to relate to NFL players, how to control lock, any of those things, you've got no chance of being successful in this league if you have 4 different head coaches in your first 5 years. So I don't think they can go for upside, Canty. I think they have to go for certainty in Cleveland because they're not a rebuilding team because they do have a lot of talent on this roster.
No, they do, and you need an adult in the room.
Yes.
I think that's the most important part of it, and I'm right there with you. You don't need a coach that's got boom or bust potential. You need a coach that can come in and have a high floor. Know what you get from that guy. Know that he's going to be the same guy every day, but most importantly, know that his messaging is going to be the same to the team week in and week out. That's the thing that Cleveland was missing the entire year.
All right, let's get back to the Dallas Cowboys now. Despite missing the playoffs, Dak Prescott played a terrific game yesterday to close out the season. 303 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and a win over Washington in what was the final game for him under his rookie contract. After the game, Dak was peppered with questions about his future and said he wasn't worried about a deal getting done.
Never thought about the contract this season and hadn't thought about it, and I have a great team of people that will handle that. When those talks come and when that happens, it happens. It'll be a blessing, but that's not why I play this game. I play this game for the love of it. My first love as an individual, and I'm committed to those guys in the locker room, my teammates, and that's what wakes me up every day. That's what gets me going, and that's why I play this game, and I play it with a passion and put so much into it. It has nothing to do with a contract or money, so I'm not thinking of that.
All right, Nick, did Dak Prescott prove that he is worth a big money contract this offseason?
No. He's going to get it, and this is just people say it's the cost of doing business. It's the way it works in the NFL. You have to pay these. No, you don't. You do not have to. Dallas, you do not, no matter what anybody tells you, you are not obligated. It is not, subclause 6B of the CBA, thou must give Dak Prescott $145 million with $120 million guaranteed. You're allowed to tell this young man, who, by the way, conducts himself beautifully. I wish I had 10% of the maturity at Dak's age that I wish I had 50% of it now that Dak has, even though he's 10 years younger than me. He conducts himself flawlessly. He has been a wonderful face of the franchise. He has been, in a league where you don't always get this, a really stellar citizen and leader. And I don't want to take anything away from him. But it's business. And you're allowed to say to Dak Prescott, here's our offer. We're going to offer you 5 years, $125 million. That's $25 million a year, and we will guarantee $75 million of it. You will never have to worry about money again. You will be set forever. We can continue on the track we're on. And if you want something substantially more than that, we're going to pull this back, and you're going to play for 1 year, $26 million on the franchise tag, and we're going to start looking around. And you can to mix metaphors, check Dak's oil, so to speak, as you would say. Like, see how he really feels about playing another prove-it year after he played this prove-it year. Because nobody said when Seattle gave Russell Wilson his $35 million a year, don't know if they should do it because we know he's great. Nobody said it about Aaron Rodgers because we know he's great. I don't think even many people said it about Carson Wentz, even though he wasn't fully proven. The guys who we question it when they get it are the guys who you know shouldn't get it. Goff, we questioned it. Stafford, we questioned it. Matt Ryan, I think some people, even though he'd been to a Super Bowl, you questioned it. Guys that when they get the deal, you're like, it's a lot of money. Your first reaction is the right reaction. It is a lot of money, and it does handcuff your team. So I wouldn't do it. I don't think he earned it this year. I think he played great against bad teams and bad against good teams. I think they will do it, Canty, and I think they'll regret it.
Well, Jenna, you said it coming into this year. Did he earn the right to get paid that kind of money, $35 million a year? No, he didn't. That's the short answer to your question. You talked about Carson Wentz, Nick. We saw that from Carson Wentz this season, being down all 3 starting receivers. No Aguilar, no Jackson, no Alshon Jeffrey. He was able to find a way to win games. That's what good quarterbacks do. That's why you pay those guys $30+ million a year, because they're able to overcome all the deficiencies that your team might have and still put you in positions to compete. This thing couldn't have been set up any better for Dak Prescott coming into this year. This was all out in front of him. Arguably the best offensive line in football. Arguably the best running back in football. A true number 1 wide receiver in Amari Cooper. An emerging number 2 in Michael Gallup. What else did you need if you were Dak Prescott?
A healthy offensive line throughout the year.
In order to have success, it just didn't make sense. And so when you see some of the losses that this Dallas Cowboys team had, yeah, I'm not paying Dak Prescott market value for a quarterback. Now, I think the Dallas Cowboys will be forced to because they don't have any alternatives this offseason, and you got to make sure you get the return on the investment with the contracts that you've already doled out to players. You're trying to compete for a championship now. You don't have the time to break in a young quarterback. So I think that Dak Prescott is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cowboys, but I don't have confidence that they're going to get a long-term deal worked out just because these two sides are so far away in terms of the compensation. And I actually understand why the Dallas Cowboys have been hesitant to this point to pay him what he's asking for.
And I think they will get a deal done because I'm gonna use an awkward metaphor here for a moment. And none of us at this table have ever been divorced, and God willing, none of us ever will be. But if you ever know someone who is on their second marriage, especially if when they got divorced the first time, friends and family were like, "Are you sure? You sure? Like, are you sure you want to leave your wife of however long, your husband for however long?" No. Absolutely. On that second time around, even if they realize early on this might not be right, they can't have been wrong about the first decision. Jerry Jones, I would wager all the money I have, still wakes up at night saying, "Did I move on from Tony too early? Tony was my adopted son. Tony was my guy. We found, we developed, undrafted. I knew he could be it." And I'm seeing, prior to this year, Brady play into his early 40s. Breeze play into his late 30s. Until this year, Phillip Rivers played at a high level. And I moved on from him because the new, hot, young quarterback was available to me. If I move on from Dak, then I was wrong about moving on from Tony. But the numbers say, you could say, oh, he was second in the NFL in passing yards. The top 5 in that category are Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, and Jameis Winston. They all have one thing in common. Ain't none of them playing in a playoff game this year. What I care about with Dak is, how was he against good teams? How was he against everybody else? And we can show it to you quickly, I think. Against good teams, Dak Prescott was awful. And the team was awful. Against bad teams, he dominated. No, maybe no quarterback in the league you have against Washington. And you saw it yesterday. You got to beat some of the good teams in order to justify the 2 other Pro Bowl level players you won't be signing because you're giving your quarterback $35 million a year. And I don't see Dak Prescott taking that next step in his evolution.
No, you're right. I don't see it either. And that one win that he has against playoff teams, that came against the Philadelphia Eagles when they were struggling to find themselves. So, I mean, the fact is that this Dallas Cowboys team only beat one club that was over 500 when they played them, that being the Los Angeles Rams, but they still weren't in position to be able to accomplish the ultimate goal, which is competing for a championship, because they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles the following week. So, I mean, when you look at reasons to pay a guy or reasons not to pay a guy, I feel like Dak Prescott gave you more reasons not to pay him this year than reasons to pay him.
Well, you got to ask yourself how much of this season was on Dak Prescott and how much of it was on Jason Garrett. Back here, first things first, now joined by former Pro Bowl cornerback Brandon Flowers. Good morning,
up, man?
Brandon?
Good to see you, brother.
Yes,
Great to see you. We had a nice holiday.
Yes,
all right, let's dive in. Say what you will about the 9-7 Philadelphia Eagles. They are beat up. They fell way short of expectations. Wentz had let's call it a subpar year. They still won the NFC East, beating the Giants yesterday, and they're still going to the playoffs. Eagles will host the Seahawks on Sunday, and Carson Wentz, who led Philly to 4 straight wins to end the season, will be making his first ever postseason appearance.
I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful to be out here with the guys in these big, meaningful games. Grateful to be playing into January. The last few weeks have been, backs against the wall for us, and guys have responded and stepped up and kept making play after play after play, and just kept believing, and here we are, playing into January, and hopefully we can do something special now.
Bit of a tale of 2 seasons for Carson Wentz, the way he started the season and then the last 4 games at least. You think that Carson Wentz has silenced some of the doubters, Nick?
Silence, no. Greatly quieted, yes. And by the way critics and doubters work, and you can consider me one of those people at times, is they can be quiet for a little bit, but there's always 1 week away from jumping right back out at you. And if they fall flat at home in the playoff game this weekend against Seattle, then a lot of those doubters and critics will come right back. But Carson Wentz has answered, no matter how they play against Seattle, some questions that we all had fairly about him coming into this year. Question 1, can he stay healthy for a full season? The answer is absolutely unequivocally yes. Question 2, can he play his best in the highest leverage, highest pressure moments? And the answer up to this point has been unequivocally yes. If they lose any of their final 4 games, they are not in the playoffs. The Dallas Cowboys are. The first of those must-win games, they're down 17-3 to the Giants. Wentz leads them on 3 straight touchdown drives. The second of those must-win games, they're trailing Washington in the 4th quarter. Wentz leads them on, I think, like a 13-play, 75-yard touchdown drive. The third of those 3 games, division on the line against the Cowboys. They dominate that game. And then yesterday, that game's 17-17 after Saquon goes house call at the tail end of the 3rd quarter. And all of a sudden, it's like all this work could have been done for nothing. And it was while even more, Brandon Brooks goes out of the game. Miles Sanders, who was playing well, he leaves the game. And Carson Wentz, once again, plays spectacularly late in that football game, makes the right plays. And so, no, he hasn't silenced the doubters to me, Brandon, but he has certainly quieted them a great deal.
The reason I think he silenced the doubters is just because look what he was playing with when he made all this happen. No Deshaun Jackson, who's his deep threat. Alshon Jeffrey is banged up all year. No Lane Johnson in the last game of the season. Aguilar was his only receiver that he could go to, and even he was out. But some way he found a way to make it happen. If it happened to Dak Prescott, if he only loses 1 receiver, that's all the reason he needs to say why he's not successful. But Carson Wentz lost 3, and he lost Ertz. So it's just like he had no weapons out there. He found a way to make it happen in that condition, in that weather. And if I feel like he had his weapons going into the playoffs, the Eagles would be a contender. So
it's not like they just ran the ball all day long. I mean, he had some deep shots down the field yesterday that he had confidence in to take and his guys to make.
Definitely. And I think if they have their pieces, they'll definitely be a contender. And they don't have to win their playoff game because he has an out. He doesn't have any weapons. No one expects him to win their playoff game. But if he just somehow make it close, I think it just shows how much of a player he is.
He doesn't have to win the playoff game, but I think a lot of people would be disappointed if they lose another game this year to the Seattle Seahawks and they're hosting it at home. I think people would be a little bit disappointed, but to all you guys' points, what Carson Wentz has done the last 4 weeks has been impressive. Now, you can't put the wins all on the quarterback. I think a big part of it has to be the defense. And 3 of those 4 wins, the defense has held the opposing team to under 20 points. So that defense showed up again yesterday, and I thought they made the game-sealing play with that Malcolm Jenkins strip off of Daniel Jones. Fletcher Cox recovered it at the 2-yard line. Boston Scott punches it in for a touchdown. They're up by double digits again. So I think that has to be a big part of the story with the Philadelphia Eagles. But your quarterback has also got to put you in position to be able to put that game away, and that's exactly what Carson Wentz did. Jenna, you mentioned some of the throws that he had. The throw he had down the seam to Dallas Goedert on the first scoring drive was impressive. The one where he's rolling out to his right and throws across his body to Josh Perkins. Then there was one where he threw it on an out to, I think it was Dallas Goedert again on a 3rd and 8 to set up a field goal. And then it was a situation where he had the one after a play had been called back, a 40-yard pass to Rob Davis from a holding penalty. He comes right back with another 40-yard pass to Deontay Burnett. So Carson Wentz has showed the ability to be able to push the ball down the field to a who's who cast of characters that's supporting him. So I think that's the most impressive thing about what he's done, to have this team be so shorthanded and to be able to still find a way to win football games. That's why you pay a guy $34 million a year.
No, and you make such a good point. There's so many other quarterbacks that would say, well, I'm handcuffed because I don't have one of my guys. He really didn't have anyone, especially Ertz, who has been his number 1 guy. But I'm just curious, forget Carson Wentz, do you have any more confidence in the team? Because as you said all season long, they need something. They need a theme. They need something to all jump on that Doug Peterson can sell to them.
I think the point of the defense playing better is a critical one, because the defense had been horrifying on the road this year, allowing nearly 30 points per game. Yesterday, they're on the road. Really, aside from Saquon getting loose on that one play, I thought they played really well.
That was like a home game for them, though. There were more Eagles fans.
Did you hear how many Eagles fans were there?
That's definitely a fair point. But I thought the defense played well and it continued to trend. And here's why I think they have a real shot this weekend. Seattle doesn't blow anybody out. Seattle has won one game this year by double digits. It was the first game against Arizona, and then they lost Arizona the next time around. They almost won another by the skin of their teeth game last night. Every Seattle win, or damn near every Seattle game, is close. So I think they'll be in this game late. And right now, Philly's got to feel as good as any team in football of, if it's close late, we can trust our quarterback. And your point on the injuries to the receivers, Brandon, is a critical one. We've literally never seen a quarterback have a season quite like Carson Wentz did. He just became the first quarterback ever to throw for 4,000 yards without having a single receiver get 500 yards receiving. So we've never had a quarterback throw for this many yards, having to distribute it this evenly. And it's not he has to distribute it evenly because I have such a bounty of weapons. It's because Deontay Burnett, nice to meet you, here's 42 yards. I mean, Perkins, I was not familiar with his work, if I'm being totally candid with you. I mean, the only reason I knew Greg Ward was because I used to live in Houston. And he was the damn quarterback for that team. Like, what he's done, and your point about when Dak or other quarterbacks, Tom Brady is one of them, is down a weapon, we're like, well, you can't blame him.
Yeah.
Carson lost an entire Pro Bowl, or not Pro Bowl unit, but an entire unit of receivers, and he did what he did.
All right, Brandon, how much of what happened this season to the Dallas Cowboys do you place on Jason Garrett?
I don't think it's too much Jason Garrett's fault. I think the blame is on Jerry Jones. You know, I think just going into this season, everybody thought Dallas was going to be a favorite. You know, everything was running smooth, and then the Zeke situation came. I think Jerry Jones knew he wanted to pay Zeke, but he wanted to create some kind of attention and media frenzy in Dallas that he loves to make it seem like he wasn't going to pay Zeke. That caused a little confrontation going into the Dallas season. And then going into December, he basically kind of showed the team that he quit it on Jason Garrett when he said Jason Garrett be coaching somewhere in the league when you needed the team to buy in to Jason Garrett going into December and have the team play for Jason Garrett, not be against Jason Garrett. So I think Jerry Jones putting all these little gems out there had the Cowboys crumble as a team and had Jason Garrett try to repair it and keep it together, and he just couldn't.
B, why would I buy into Jason Garrett as the head coach when I know that he doesn't have job security past this year?
Exactly. No player in the locker room is going to fight for their head coach when they feel like he's not going to be there. And if you do that as an owner, you might as well just fire him and have an interim come in. Whoever the team is rallying around, whether it's the offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, and just try to jumpstart this team and create some kind of momentum going into December and into January and try to get ready for the playoffs. But I just think he just did them a disservice to quit on their head coach.
I completely agree with you. Jerry Jones is the one that messed this thing up from jump by having Jason Garrett go into 2019 as a lame duck coach. I mean, he essentially sealed his fate. This team was going to underachieve. Jason Garrett, if he was going to get it turned around, it would have happened by now. He's been the coach for a decade. He's had 9 full seasons, and he took over in 2010 with half the season left. So the fact is that what Jason Garrett has done, his entire body of work, has not been good enough. Only 3 playoff berths, 2 playoff wins. I mean, you would have felt like he would have figured it out by now, and he hasn't. So if Jerry Jones didn't have enough conviction to give Jason Garrett a contract extension going into this year, then he probably should have moved on, understanding that the clock is ticking because you do have a quarterback that's still on a rookie contract, because you do have a lot of these deals from some of your young talent coming up, that this is something that you got to get done now. You got to make a decision. I feel like he's making the Jason Garrett decision as far as who his head coach is going to be a year too late.
With respect to both you guys, I totally disagree. I think Jerry Jones has been great to Jason Garrett. And Jason Garrett had not earned a contract extension. You couldn't fire him after they win 7 of 8 last year in a playoff game, but you also, I didn't feel, could extend him when it was just his 3rd playoff appearance in his near decade as a head coach, when hell, Bill Parcells and Wade Phillips, when you were there, Canty, they made the playoffs 4 out of 7 years, and that wasn't good enough. Parcells walked away. Wade got fired a year after making the postseason. So I understood the position they were in, which was you were good good enough to keep your job last year because we rallied at the end, not good enough to get an extension. So, okay, so my owner doesn't fire me. What else can he do for me? Make sure all my players are available week 1. I understand your point. There was some drama surrounding it, but they didn't get a contract done with Amari, but Amari showed up. They didn't get a contract done with Dak. Dak showed up. Zeke wasn't going to show up, so they get a contract done with him. They extend Jalen Smith early. They give other guys contracts early, so they are bought in. And the team starts off 3-0. It's not like they started off poorly.
Look who they played, though. Come on now.
No. I totally agree. All year long, they feasted on bad competition. Yeah. I don't disagree with that. The point I'm making is I think Jerry Jones was plenty fair to Jason Garrett until that comment after the Patriot game. That, to me, was the turning point. And my biggest criticism of Jerry Jones is should have fired him right then. He knew he was fired. He knew it was over for Jason Garrett right then. And if the argument is you can't fire him right then because you played on Thanksgiving that week, then so it'd be 3 days, then do it the day after Thanksgiving when it is a full 7-day work week, Thursday to Thursday, or do it after the following Thursday when you have 10 days to prepare for the Rams game. He did it none of those times, and what did it lead to? It led to, for the 4th time in Jason Garrett's career, they're playing a divisional opponent in week 16 or 17 in a win and you're in scenario. And for the 4th time, the Cowboys went home having not won. And so it is not all on Jason Garrett. DeMarcus Lawrence, highest paid player in Cowboys history, needed to play better. Dak needed to play better against the best of competition. All these things are true, but Jason Garrett failed this year, and it was a prove-it year for him.
Well, here's the thing. I can understand why Jerry Jones didn't fire him after the Thanksgiving Day loss or after the loss the following week to the Bears, because no team on an interim coach has made the playoffs, and they still had an opportunity to get to the postseason. All they had to do was beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and they could not get that done. Now, with respect to coming into this season, there's a reason why teams don't let head coaches going into the year be a lame duck head coach, meaning not have any remaining years on his contract. You can do that with players, whether they're in a contract year or a franchise tag, but the psychology of the team is different when it comes to the head coach. And I think that's the part that you're underselling right here in terms of recognizing the importance of the owner empowering their head coach, not just with words, but with dollars and with a contract extension. If you don't feel like he earned a long-term contract extension, well, you can add another year onto that year. It's not like it will be the first team in the NFL that has done that before, but the one thing that you can't underdo is undermine your head coach's authority, and that's exactly what Jason Garrett had happened to him when Jerry Jones didn't give him a contract extension.
Well, Brandon, let me ask you a question, because you were in Kansas City when Herm got fired. I can't remember the coaches you played for with the Chargers, but you've obviously played for coaches who the locker room had a feeling he might not be here next year. Yeah. What is the practical effect of that? When Candy's talking about players not buying in because they don't think the coach is going to be there, what does that actually look and feel like? What does that mean?
A lot of players feel like the season is over because this coach is not going to be here next year. If you're not winning, you're not in playoff contention. Some teams and some players just feel like the season is over. I'm just going to try to get out of here healthy so my contract can maintain. And that's why I think, the Philadelphia game when the Cowboys felt like their coach might not be there, they didn't show urgency. They didn't show they wanted to be in the playoffs. They didn't show that hunger. I mean, they showed it against the Redskins, but when it really counted, I just felt like they didn't have that urgency and that pep in their step to play for their coach because they felt like he wasn't going to be there anyway. And that's why I said it was a disservice when Jerry Jones made that comment.
Candy, little in or out?
Sure, let's do it, Jenna.
Okay, sticking with the college football playoff, Joe Burrow and LSU dominated Oklahoma on Saturday to reach the national title game in New Orleans. Trevor Lawrence led Clemson to a win over Ohio State Saturday night to set up a Tigers versus Tigers showdown. Candy, you in or out on LSU beating Clemson in the title game?
Jenna, I am in, and that's hard for me to say because I'm an ACC guy. I want to go with the Clemson Tigers, but I got to roll with the Bayou Bengals just because of how explosive that offense is. Joe Burrow, 7 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, smashed every passing record for LSU that they had in the school's record books, but just that dominant performance on offense and then their defense with Grant Delpit and Clavon Chasen flying around, I just think that they can match up with the skill position players for the Clemson Tigers on offense. I don't think Clemson has the ability to match up with what LSU does with their passing attack.
Jenna, I'm going to hold the ACC down right now, and I'm going to say out for LSU. Clemson just shows so much pedigree and championship integrity the way they battled against Ohio State. You know, they had every reason to fold. I mean, they was getting smacked all across the field, big plays here and there. The defense played bend but not break defense. And, you know, Trevor Lawrence just came through in the clutch and showed why he will be a top pick when he does come out for the draft next year. So I'm going to go in on Clemson.
You're in on Clemson, out on LSU beating them. I am also out. Listen, there are 3 teams in America better than everybody. Whichever one of the 3 got to play Oklahoma was going to look demonstrably better than everybody else. Ohio State, Clemson, either one of them are good enough to win the title. I think Clemson will win the title. Colin Cowherd and I told you guys a week and a half ago, Clemson -1.5 was our favorite bet of the year. Now, it looked to be on life support at some point, but came through for you. Right now, Clemson getting 5.5 or 6, depending on where you get it. I like Clemson not only plus the points, but to win outright. Clemson is the best team in college football. Trevor Lawrence has never lost a game, and they're going to remind everyone of that when the national championship game is actually played, which I think is in about 7 weeks from now.
If Clemson wins that game, it would be because Dabo Swinney clearly outcoached Coach O, who has won Coach of the Year. That would be the reason if it happens.
Okay.
All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys now. Dak Prescott's Cowboys were eliminated despite the fact that he threw for 4 touchdowns in their win over Washington. After the game, Dak said he didn't want to talk about a new deal. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about a new deal for him. Canny, you in or out on the Cowboys making Dak one of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL?
I am in, Jenna, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think the Dallas Cowboys will be forced to because they won't have any alternative. This team does not have the time to break in another quarterback. They got to roll with Dak Prescott as their guy, and as a result, they're probably going to have to pay him on a long-term deal, and I think that will prove to be costly in the end.
All right, Brandon.
I'm in also, and for the reasons you just explained, I agree. You know, quarterback is the only position. They're like the unicorns. You can be above average and get a top deal in this league, the only position that can do it. I think he'll sit somewhere between Jared Goff and Carson Wentz at that number 4 spot. Quarterbacks don't grow on trees, so if you have Dak in your franchise, you got to keep him.
I'm absolutely out. Dak's not one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFC, much less in the NFL. They're going to pay him. It probably will happen, and they're going to drastically regret it immediately. Dallas, for once in your lives, play hardball. Tell them for $25 million a year with $75 million guaranteed, and if you won't take it, we got a beautiful thing called the franchise tag for you. Now, I hate the franchise tag on principle, but it is available to you. It's available to you. This is what it's there for, to prevent these type of catastrophic mistakes.
Jerry Jones has so much money. Give him what he wants. You got your leader. Now you just got to work around him.
But it's not it's not about Jerry's money. It's about the salary cap.
Yeah, you got to franchise him with a new head coach coming in anyway. See if it's going to work.
All right, to the Patriots. New England suffered a massive loss yesterday to Miami, despite being 17-point favorites.
Fake news.
Kansas City swooped in to take the 2 seed with the Patriots losing. Patriots fall to the, wait for it, 3 seed.
That can't be right.
Canny, you in or out on the Patriots having any shot of reaching the Super Bowl?
Before you enter, Canny, when's the last time the Patriots had to play Wildcard weekend?
2009, and it didn't work out for them very well. They played against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens ran the ball for 230 yards.
They're not done till they're done,
52 carries.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
all right, sorry.
carries,
Go ahead and answer the question.
No, man, that was the answer. I don't know that the Patriots are going to make it out of Wild Card weekend just because they're playing the Tennessee Titans. And that's a team that can run the football. They got this year's rushing champ in Derrick Henry. So, I mean, the one place that we said this Patriots defense could got was with the ground game. So Tennessee is perfectly positioned to be able to take advantage of that. There's no way that the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl this year.
I'm out also. I tried to hang on to the Patriots dynasty as long as I could, and I can't do it anymore. When you lose the final game of the season at home against Miami, that shows you're not the same team. And Mike Vrabel knows this team. He's going to get these guys ready to play. And like Canty said, this running game is going to be a problem for New England.
You guys don't need to put me on camera. Everyone knows what I'm going to say. Just show those beautiful highlights a little more. I mean, Brady's perfect pass to Eric Rowe, right between 2 Patriots. Eric Rowe used to be on his team. He's not anymore. How does the Patriot defense let this happen? Fitzmagic driving the field. Of course I'm out.
Fitzmagic.
I mean, how could you possibly say in after watching what happened? The biggest upset in the NFL in 20 years. Cost the Patriots the bye. Now if they are fortunate enough to get through Tennessee, where's that game going to be played, Candy, the divisional round?
That's going to be in Arrowhead.
In Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Unless Kansas City loses before because they got the bye.
They don't have to worry about playing this
That's fortunate.
Yeah.
Benefit of the doubt. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Was lost yesterday when you lose to the Dolphins.
Also, Steph will leave me if I'm off the Patriots bandwagon.
Jenna's married to a diehard Patriot.
Take a break. We're playing a game. It's called Drawing a Blank. Here we go. With the Wildcard weekend matchups now set, Drew Brees and the Saints preparing for a Minneapolis Miracle rematch with the Vikings, this time in New Orleans. That game on Fox. Kenny, the Wildcard game you are most excited about this weekend is blank.
I'm going to go Titans-Patriots just because I think the Titans have the best chance to pull off the upset in Wildcard weekend. You look around the landscape, the other three games, I just feel like the Patriots are more vulnerable than those other teams. Now, I know that's putting a lot on it because that's giving a lot of confidence to the Bill O'Brien coach team. Yeah. But nonetheless, the Patriots offense hasn't looked good. But yesterday, the Patriots defense didn't look good. That's supposed to be the identity of this team, their strength. And they got beat by Ryan Fitzmagic in the Dolphins offense in a situation where they had a 4-point lead, 4 minutes left. So I'm going to go Titans-Patriots.
I'm going Titan-Patriots as well. I don't want to jump off the Patriots bandwagon. I want to agree with you, Jenna, but I just wanted to see if they're going to be that playoff team that's just going to snap back into it, regain their confidence at home. They're not playing on the road. They're back at home. It's going to be familiar to them in that stadium to see if they can go ahead and silence the doubters.
The only reason I can't pick Titans-Patriots is I can't have, of the 4 games this week, and the one I'm most excited for, the one with the worst quarterback matchup. I mean, Tannehill's having a great year. Brady was having a terrible year, but still, Tannehill, Brady doesn't really get the juices flowing, at least to me. Not like Cousins, Breeze, Vikings, Saints. Here's why I'm the most excited for this game. For Kirk Cousins, it's the most singularly important moment of his career. He's having the best year of his career. He's going into the final year of that fully guaranteed deal in Minnesota. He's been really good this season. We don't give him any credit because he hasn't done it in the postseason, and he keeps getting whooped on Monday Night Football. If he goes to New Orleans and beats an overqualified 3 seed. The Saints are good enough to be the number 1 seed, talent to be the number 1 seed in the NFL. Hell, if they win the Niners game, they are the number 1 seed. Game they lost in the last second field goal, then nobody can question him in that deal anymore. The Saints, on the other hand, can have a very tough road to the Super Bowl. They might be the most talented team in the whole NFC. Vikings-Saints, the game I'm most excited for, and it's the best quarterback matchup of the weekend.
He said. On to the top seeds.
Brady, Tannehill.
Wins yesterday propelled the Chiefs, Packers, and Niners to crucial first-round playoff byes. Kansas City got the help they needed from Miami in New England. So, Candy, the team that earned a bye yesterday that needed it the most was blank.
Jenna, it's the Green Bay Packers, and I had the Packers as my Super Bowl pick out of the NFC.
But sounds like past tense, buddy.
Listen, man, this offense has me worried, man. This offense just does not look right. I mean, they've won 5 straight games, but in 4 of the 5, they failed to score north of 24 points. So, I mean, even though they have one of the most talented quarterbacks the game has ever seen, this Matt LaFleur offense just has yet to come around. And then that Packers defense is very Jekyll and Hyde. So I think they needed to buy more so than anybody else in the NFC.
And Rodgers was shaky yesterday. He was overthrowing everybody yesterday. Go ahead, Brandon.
My pick is the Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs is the team with Andy Reid that doesn't play up to their caliber sometimes in the playoffs, but Andy Reid is 18-3 off buys. He gets a bye in the first round. He'll be very prepared to go into his first playoff game this year at home. I think it benefited the Chiefs for having that bye to prepare.
1,000% agree with you. The Chiefs, after the Mahomes injury, they needed to, they thought, run the table in order to get the bye. They then lose that heartbreaking game to Tennessee, and it looked like they were capped out at the 3 seed. Because of the Patriots' unforgivable loss yesterday, now the Chiefs get that extra week to prepare. They can already start, I think, doing some things, getting ready for Baltimore if they have to go there for the AFC Championship game, and start preparing for New England or Buffalo or Houston, 3 teams they could play. For all those reasons, it's the Chiefs. Now, I didn't expect it. I'm flying back to Kansas City this weekend. I thought I'd be going to a playoff game. They ain't even got a playoff game. Thanks, Fitzpatrick. Actually, no, sincerely. Thanks, Ryan Fitzpatrick. That was really great. I love you so much, man.
Freddie Kitchens is finished as Browns head coach. The team announced his firing shortly after they lost to Cincy, their 3rd straight loss to finish the season at 6-10. Kenny, the team with the most disappointing season was blank.
Jenna, it's got to be the Dallas Cowboys. This is a team that came in with Super Bowl aspirations, and they don't even make the playoffs. It came down to that Week 16 game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and Dak Prescott and that Cowboys team came up small. So for me, it has to be the Cowboys.
I'm going Cowboys as well. As was everybody's Super Bowl contender. Coming into the season this year, they didn't even make the playoffs, had one game to win, and the thing that got me mad was they didn't show effort to me. They just felt like they didn't care. They didn't have urgency. That's why I got to go to Cowboys.
I actually did not have the Cowboys in the playoffs. I did, however, have the Browns winning their division. Instead, I had them going 10-6. I was half right. They just flip it around. They went 6-10.
That's not what half right.
That's not half right.
No,
They're firing their coach. Baker was a train wreck. I love Colin Cowherd. It really irritates me how right he was about Baker, how right you were about the Browns. Both things irritate me quite a bit.
Yeah, they are.
Cleveland Browns, the most disappointing season in the NFL to me, bar none.
I don't like irritating you. I just want to make sure that our audience knows. You know what? I take it back. I absolutely
Great job.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.